bring you all 12 stanzas. We can tell you, though, that Labor MP Josh Burns is back on our political panel once again, maybe for the last time, Josh, and he's joined today by James Stephens. Welcome to you too, James. Exactly how much thought did go into that?
Greg, that is very cruel that you... No, look, it's a festive season and there's so much to talk about in terms of the achievements of the Albanese Labor government. So I thought, what better to do it, but what better way than to do it in rhyme?
I can't remember if there was a verse in there about industrial relations legislation because at the time we speak, James, we're still not certain when the Senate is going to deal with that, but it will, and then you guys will tick and flick in the House. What happens next? Will the repercussions be as dire as some people on your side have been predicting?
Well, we accept this legislation is going to pass tonight or tomorrow or Saturday, and that is very unfortunate for all the businesses that are so uncertain about what this means for them. It was really sprung upon not just us in the Parliament, but obviously the whole economy just in the last matter of weeks, really. And we think on top of the glaring challenges that it brings, there's also a lot of devil in the detail that we don't even know yet how significant the impact is going to be.
But if it works, if it manages to ratchet up wages at rates faster than are currently being experienced, why is that a bad thing?
Well, we're all for real wages growth. I don't accept that that's going to be the outcome of this legislation, and I am concerned that quite the opposite could occur, and particularly unemployment might go up, because if we're changing the law and creating uncertainty for businesses that were about to make decisions maybe to hire new staff, maybe they'll just step back and say this is all too frightening and confusing, and that could be the outcome, quite the reverse of the claims. Well,
everyone should pay on results on these things. If it wasn't working, if it was having adverse results, Josh, sending businesses to the wall, particularly small businesses, would it or should it be revisited?
I think everyone needs to take a big, deep breath here, Greg, because before the election, when the Prime Minister said he supported a rise to the minimum wage, we heard exactly the same sort of hypothetical arguments coming out of the opposition, the now opposition, about what the effects of the minimum wage increase would be. Well, the minimum wage has been increased in the sky. I'm just checking in the AVC studios, it hasn't fallen in. Let's look at what's actually in this bill. There are clauses in there to make pathways to permanent jobs. So if you've been in a job for 2 years, we think that's the threshold that you should have a chance to have permanent employment. We think that the gender pay gap in this country at 14% is a national shame. So we're going to make gender equity, pay equity, an objective of the Fair Work Act. We are going to give workers the ability to bargain, and in small businesses, if they choose to, medium businesses, if they choose to have a chance for workers to have a pay increase.
It's that part above all else which has the ire of small business, or even medium-sized business and large business in mining companies too.
Yeah, but the problem is, Greg, is that we've been in opposition for a decade and there has not been one single policy introduced into either House of Parliament by the former government to increase the wages of Australian workers. Not one. And so it's very easy to say, oh, we support wage increases, but they weren't actually willing to do anything about it. We're a Labor government. We believe in giving workers the rights at the bargaining table. Our enterprise bargaining system that we've currently got is resulting in low wages, and we're going to try and fix it.
All right, let's move to an outstanding piece of work for the government. I think you were just debating this in the House before you both came up here, and this is energy price relief through some sort of intervention into coal and gas. We're hearing, James, that some states are demanding compensation, perhaps from the federal government, if it has to be paid by them to mining companies, particularly in coal. Is that fair enough? I mean, should the Commonwealth be footing a bill if it mounts a market intervention with price capping?
Well, definitely. I think that if the federal government are pulling levers that impact on the states rather than them, then they should bear the cost of that. And it is a sort of frightening set of propositions, the concept of price caps in a free market with people that have invested to ride the wave of the ups and downs of the cycle now being told that when times are good, we're going to change the rules on you, that is going to have a really frightening impact on a lot of investment decisions into the future, which is, of course, only going to exacerbate the supply side challenges we've got.
Well, this is unresolved, isn't it, Josh? Because we've already heard on this program, Dom Perrottet from New South Wales, I believe Anastasia Palaszczuk has said similar things. If you go there, they're going to come to you for the tab for whatever the compensation element is.
Well, James and I might have similar ties on, but we have different views on this. James might be happy to take the side of some of the large energy providers who are, frankly, doing very, very handsomely right now, while Australian consumers and Australian businesses are at their absolute limit in terms of price point and the price of gas and energy. Something needs to be done. Clearly the prices are unsustainable, and we can't have a situation where huge profits are being made at the expense of businesses and of families. So we are going to try and tackle the huge price rises in energy and in gas, and we're going to work with the states and territories. Ideally, we want to work with anyone who wants to help us make it more affordable for Australians.
But do you do that at any price? Because some estimates of the compensation in coal run into the billions, if not tens of billions of dollars.
Well, we haven't made any announcements yet, Greg. The only thing we have said is that we'll do it by Christmas, and we'll make announcements by Christmas. So the announcements will be made in coming time, but all I would reiterate is that we'll work with anyone, because Australians are doing it pretty tough right now, and it's the role of the government to be on the sides of the Australian people, not on the sides of the big businesses who are making a lot of money right now.
All right. I don't know if you were in the House, James, when Chris Bowen delivered the first sort of formal or official climate update on the targets today, but we discover that this government's starting trajectory is to a figure of 40%, so not very far short of their 2030 target of 43. Does that surprise you in any way that is the trend?
Not really. I've never had much interest in Labor's targets because it's achieving them that's what matters. We know that the modelling of their whole energy policy they took to the election is now completely out the window. There are huge challenges around implementation, and particularly when it comes to the major transmission, $20 billion of transmission they promised. I mean, we're already 6 months into that 10-year horizon. I just don't see any of the promises actually being implemented. So whatever they say on a piece of paper is irrelevant compared to what they actually achieve.
Yeah, they are only theoretical trends towards that trajectory, aren't they? I mean, none of the getting to 40% is only what happens if you do what you promised to do, but you haven't in the first 6 months. That criticism is at least fair. With
respect, Greg, I think it's absolutely incorrect. I mean, James referred to our $20 billion rewiring the nation policy, which is about transmission lines. So if we're going to put new energy into the market, we need to be able to connect them into the grid. Well, the first deal that's been done was done between the federal government and the Tasmanian government, with the Victorian government on the side for the Marinus Link. Tasmania is currently at 100% renewable energy. They're looking to get up to 200% because they have huge capacity in wind and in hydro. So we want to be able to export renewable energy from Tasmania into the mainland. We've already done $6 billion of that $20 billion in the first 6 months that James was referring to. We are doing what we promised, and we are going to bring down power prices, and we are going to get to 82% renewable energy by 2030.
All right. Well, it looks like we're going to be able to assess that each and every year with these updates. So we'll be doing that perhaps around this time next year. Earlier this morning, following on from yesterday's censure of Scott Morrison, Adam Bandt decided to have another crack by seeing whether the Privileges Committee might take a further look at the former Prime Minister's conduct. Is that a bridge too far?
Well, I think this matter had already been raised with the Speaker. I don't really know what the new information is since his previous ruling. Obviously, the Speaker is from the Labor Party, so I don't think anyone would suggest he's not utterly impartial in looking at these considerations. So I get the politics, I get the stunt. We're talking about it, so Adam has achieved what he wanted, but I'm not aware of any reason why the situation will change from the Speaker's previous ruling.
How do you feel about all of this? Was it done as of yesterday's censure motion, the Scott Morrison multiple ministries matter?
Well, there's a couple of things to say. The first is that the Speaker's currently considering the referral, and I'll let the Speaker come up with what he sees is appropriate. But frankly, I see this in the same way that John Howard does, in the same way that Josh Frydenberg does, in the same way that Malcolm Turnbull does. You can't say that they are partisan heroes of the Australian Labor Party. They are proud Liberal members, and were all appalled by the fact that Scott Morrison, without telling his colleagues, bypassing the Westminster system, bypassing our Parliament, appointed himself the Minister for 6 different portfolios.
Doesn't mean they support a censure, though. They may well say we support the legislation that is going to be brought in to make sure this doesn't happen again, but it's a separate argument, isn't it, whether the censure was the end of it? So that's my question to you.
Yeah.
Do you think the censure was and should be the end of it?
Well, I voted for the censure, and I do think that a censure is a significant step and a significant stance for the Parliament to take. And I thought that it was an appropriate response to the way in which the former Prime Minister bypassed our Westminster practices. Now, in terms of what is beyond that, we'll obviously consider what the Speaker says, and if he thinks that there are further ways in which the Parliament needs to be able to ensure that this doesn't happen again, then I would consider that. There is a bill before the Parliaments right now that makes it clear that any appointment to any ministry has to be made public, and I think that's an appropriate response as well.
All right, and The Voice, just finally, James Stephens, you can state your position once again on all of this, but with particular reference to where your Nationals cousins have decided to go this week. Does it make it harder for a Liberal consensus to emerge?
Look, I doubt there will be a Liberal consensus. I respect colleagues of mine that have different positions, and I just don't think, knowing many of those that have got firm views in both directions, that either camp are going to be held to some kind of strict binding position on it. But really the pressure is on the government to populate the uncertainty that's out there, and the Nationals have highlighted that this week. They've said, you know, we've decided to come to a position because there's no detail about what this is all about. We don't know when that's going to occur. Clearly, their supporters have been quite active and wanting them to take a position. We haven't yet, but when we do, I think we'll very respectfully accommodate a whole range of views within our team as we lead towards the referendum.
Okay, I would normally draw you out on that, Josh, but I'm being told you have a commitment to get to straight away, so I think I'm going to have to respect that, and time will not permit us to get your thoughts. I think we know where you stand anyway.
I support The Voice, Greg.
Yeah, thanks so much, and thanks to both of you for everything this year. Frequent
Thanks, Greg.
participants in our program. Best to all.